This video is sponsored by Incogni. Usually, I don't engage with the culture war flavor of the week. I've spoken about it at length, but we are in a constant churn of culture war recycling at this point, kept alive by a buffet of grifters and influencers that have material interests in not only consuming capital C content, but using that content to create more content, usually in service of making their followers mad at said content for having a black person as Aragorn or whatever. But this last week, things must have been exceptionally slow at the Grift Factory because a subsection of the social media sphere had a collective aneurysm when Wizards of the Coast released this seemingly innocuous promotional image for Dungeons & Dragons, encouraging anyone to be able to tell their own story. Now, at first glance, you might just think this is a random promotional image, a pastel-hued, family-friendly, and broadly palatable depiction of the world of D&D. I won't make any argument about the simple art style that feels plucked from any number of indie comics that I would skip over because I just don't care for the oversaturated style. But aside from that, this just kind of looks like D&D. You got partying kobolds, you got bards, you got romance and monsters, and everyone's just having a chill time. But if you think this is just a promotional image, not even affixed to any particular product, just a brand, you must be sorely mistaken, judging by the reaction from a certain group of very angry people. According to them, this image is several other things. It's evidence that hobbies must be gatekept, that LGBTQ people are subversives trying to infiltrate and overtake these hollowed spaces. It's DEI nobody wanted, and most importantly, it does not represent the real gamers who play Dungeons & Dragons because they would never have kobolds having fun, and they would never fall in love, certainly. And as I dug more into this phenomenon of critique, these are opinions, and opinions like them have been repeated ad nauseum, seemingly copied and pasted across various forums, well before even this piece of promotional art. And I found this one post from a forum that just asked, why is this game becoming gay? As I've been informed after a tweet where I jokingly mocked people who presented their much more badass and mostly AI alternatives to this pastel D&D branding, the real gamers, in fact, don't want anything remotely resembling whimsy or silliness, but instead want to sit down and play very serious games of pretending to be wizards and badass muscle-bound warriors. Kind of seems like a lot of these folks also just want to play a game predicated on being anything you want and imagining grand new realms and stories in the most boring, bland way possible, and they certainly don't want anything in their fantasy to be gay. Aside from the fact that so many of these people sound like they would be absolutely miserable DMs who would make their table suffer for their own petty reasons instead of playing a game to have things like fun, there were so many recurring threads of criticism that just made no sense to me. But before we get to that, let's try and make a little more sense of the world together. And that means taking control of your data security. Online data brokers, let's call them dragons, have your information and you have no idea how it's being used. You might say it's something of a quest to even find out. All your tomes, all your orbs, all your scrolls, they're just out and about online. Right now, your orbs could be getting pondered by wizards you've never even heard of. And they can be scrying to know about your personal information, addresses, IP info, your family members, and other intimately personal issues that are being sold and used as data that targets you for ads, identity theft, AI training, and who knows what else. And that's why this video is sponsored by Incogni. Incogni is a service I've used myself to scrub information from data broker sites and places you probably don't even realize your orbs are being sold, your information is being sold. Your information is being sold. With Incogni, you can get your phone numbers, emails, addresses, and more scrubbed across the web, and with their family plan feature, you can add 3 additional people to the list with all their accompanying information, allowing you to help prevent your parents who might not be great with tech from being targeted or keep your kiddos safe while browsing. Think of it like casting a protection spell for your... Okay, I'll stop. It's for the rest of the video. Additionally, Incogni will send monthly requests to their database of more than 230 brokers to remove your information for you, updating you every step of the way. And with Incogni's new custom removal feature, you can send them any URL posting your name, your address, or your private info, and they will go and remove it for you. And I have personally used Incogni and can verify just how impressive their efforts are. I know I was shocked at how far and wide my information, even out-of-date information, had circulated, and I was so relieved I could get it removed with Incogni. And you can also take your personal data back with Incogni. Use code DEADDOMAIN at the link below and get 60% off an annual plan. Or you can go to incogni.com/deaddomain for 60% off, or one more time using code DEADDOMAIN at the link down below. And with that threat to the kingdom finally vanquished, let's get back to pondering our orbs, by which I mean seeing what people on Twitter are mad about today. One odd preoccupation I noticed browsing the comments were wheelchairs being mentioned, apparently an in-group reference to a controversy where people were livid that wheelchairs had been introduced into 5e. I missed this controversy because having a wheelchair in a setting with dragons doesn't seem that ridiculous. We're already talking about dragons. But for a subsection of fans, this was proof positive that the game was diluting its identity, or trying to appeal to a apparently non-existent DEI market share that Hasbro had turned to political correctness to try and sell the game to a wider variety of people. This ties right into the criticism of this post, by the way, where people are accusing Hasbro of making D&D gay. Apparently, people are surprised or angry about how a game emphasizing fantasy might appeal to queer people, people of color, or other marginalized groups. Yes, fantasy, a genre defined by beautiful, long-haired, androgynous elves, muscle-bound, shirtless warriors with oiled-up abs, strong, domineering warrior women, shapeshifters, bizarre fashions, and more things you can find watching any given episode of Drag Race. To say nothing of the fact of how a game like this, where you're given freedom to express yourself and present yourself however you might want to, might appeal to LGBTQ people. Yeah, a real mystery why a gay or trans person might play D&D, truly a travesty. It must be Wizards of the Coast's social engineering DEI to make one guy at your local game store mad. I saw a lot of this idea that these people were invading D&D to use D&D as a queer therapy session of some sort, which is just such a bizarre idea on its own. Do they really think that just because a queer person sits down at a D&D table, they don't want to go on an adventure and are instead going to derail the group into talking about their feelings? I can't tell if this is a genuine belief or just through osmosis they all believe in this nebulous made-up person that they have collectively invented to get mad at. What I can tell you is that my experience with predominantly queer D&D players doesn't reflect this at all. Everyone I know who actively plays D&D, and I mean like I can never do anything forever on Tuesday because Tuesday is D&D night, plays D&D, is queer. And every time I hear about their adventures, they are tales of action and espionage, subterfuge, intrigue, laid over campaigns that sometimes take years to finish. So I get that that is anecdotal, but from my sample size of queer active D&D players, they're not going to it for any kind of therapy sesh, but just the exact same thing that the people mad about them even playing the game are apparently brought to the game by. And I'm sure that people in the comments, or even in these comment sections on Twitter, are talking about some kind of game at their LGS where somebody sat down once and got mad about being given the wrong pronouns, or some other personal anecdote that they'll use to blanket justify saying, oh, D&D is just queer slut therapy sessions now, or whatever. But all I can say is that I wasn't there, so I can't speak to it. What I can speak to is that if someone is going to go through the effort to show up and engage with your hobby respectfully, you should additionally be respectful of their personhood. And if you are, you'll probably find that you have a mutual love of adventuring in common. And from here, I kind of want to address the most obvious thing up front, and that's probably the question many of you will be asking by now, especially if you have any familiarity with D&D, which is, why would anybody be mad about this? You don't have to play a D&D that looks like this. That's the whole point. Even the post is all about telling your own story. That's absolutely correct. Some people, many of whom I suspect don't really play D&D, accused Hasbro and WotC of ruining the game, and many others brandished the classic, "this is what they took away from you" approach, comparing and contrasting this one promotional image with art from previous iterations of D&D, be it guidebooks or even cover art. So, couple of things to pick apart here. The first being that you still have those things. Nobody is trying to take them away from you. And furthermore, depicting this one colorful promotional image doesn't somehow mean that you can't have your grimdark fantasy setting. One criticism I saw tried to frame this one singular image as what D&D was as a brand. Definitionally, this was D&D, but no, you can even go on to the exact same page and see other promotional images brandishing entirely different art styles. And that's the thing about fantasy. It's all made up. Lore isn't real. It can be retconned. It can be iterated. You can just make your own. And even if you really want to stick to the established lore, are there no ways to have fun within the established D&D frameworks? You mean to tell me that you're against gay people, something that's real, in your game that has dragons, a fantasy creature, in the name? Yet, as ever, the people mad at this, and especially the people driving their audiences to get mad at this for more social media engagement, don't care about facts, but their feelings. Culture war fodder? Absolutely. This was just another piece of coal shoveled into the engine to fuel impotent consumer rage. It's not like there might be any other pressing issues to think about right now, or more importantly, any pressing issues that the same people presenting this culture war might not want their audiences to think about. Don't look at Trump sending your kids to die for Israel, or the emerging authoritarian state in America, or the technocratic class sous videing the planet so you can post violent, angry slop AI videos about killing fantasy creatures. No, please keep focusing on this inconsequential key jangling in front of you, weaponizing your attachment to a hobby that, again, if the comments are an indication, people prize for its escapism and the fact that they can escape into these fictional worlds as a refuge from the things they don't like about the real world. I'm sure it's completely normal that those things are like people of color and queer people, instead of, say, acknowledging how the systems around you are designed to keep you complacent and distracted from real material issues. Truthfully, this advertisement just isn't worth getting this mad over. It's inconsequential. Removed from D&D, a game that people are passionate about, this is just the most bottom-rung, standard mass appeal advertisement. Is it meant to be appealing to broad demographics like people of color and queer people? Yeah, because Wizards of the Coast likes money, and fantasy appeals to a wide variety of players. And I can't help but think that's what people might be really mad about, at least some of them. The idea that the company is, through branding, appealing to a wider audience that doesn't align with these people who believe they made up the core demographic. They are mad about other people coming into their sandbox and playing with their toys. These are grown adults who are saying, unironically, this is a boys' game, no girls allowed. Wait, you can pretend to be a dwarf warrior mercenary, but can't pretend for a minute you didn't let the bullies in high school define your entire existence. Pithy jokes aside, I understand why so many people might react strongly to seeing this kind of thing. D&D is the kind of game you put hundreds of hours into, and it's also a group effort. You spend so much time bonding with friends, adventuring, writing new lore and dungeons. There's a lot of personal investment that goes into the game by nature of it being a creative hobby. So for someone to present to you an argument that these queers are trying to take it over or take something away from you, that can probably bring some pretty passionate feelings to the surface. I don't empathize with those feelings, to be clear, because if someone being gay or black is enough to make you forsake a beloved hobby, it kind of seems like the hobby wasn't about having creative adventures with friends, but instead that you made excluding people with similar interests but different backgrounds and experiences your personal hobby. And that fucking sucks. I can only speculate, but maybe it's the cognitive dissonance a lot of these players are encountering, that they didn't actually enjoy the freedom and expression afforded by an open-ended creative game, but rather enjoyed the feeling of excluding others, of gatekeeping, of telling someone else, this is mine, you can't have it. Unfortunately, we live in a world where that's just not a tenable way to enjoy things. You certainly don't have to like this kind of art or this style, whether stylistically or what it's depicting. I don't like it at all. I think it's incredibly sterilized. It lacks the detail I find enchanting in good fantasy art. But that also doesn't affect my enjoyment of D&D sessions with my friends. I enjoy things because of what they bring me, such as friendship, a chance to make memories, opportunities to solve puzzles and challenge myself in creative situations. I don't engage in hobbies to get mad at other people for how they engage in hobbies. The variety and creativity afforded by D&D is and has always been the core appeal of the game. And that's my segue to Magic the Gathering. Also owned by Hasbro. Magic the Gathering is suffering currently from the very thing that so many people are mad at D&D for as it relates to this piece of art, where people are accusing WotC of selling out or betraying fans or ruining the game or appealing to non-fans, as we've discussed. There's not a lot of merit of those things for D&D. Queer people and people of color are going to be drawn to the game naturally. Marketing research from Hasbro probably shows that, which is why they put out pieces like this. They're a massive company. They're trying to make money. It's rainbow capitalism. Rest assured, Hasbro doesn't actually care about queer people aside from how much money from them can help their bottom line. That's just the fact. No, while this piece of art certainly doesn't warrant those egregious complaints, there is another WotC product that does, and right now it's Magic the Gathering. Spoiler, the problem isn't other people enjoying your hobby. The problem is companies getting greedy and the enshittification and Fortnitification of every IP into one single gelatinous mass. Now, Hasbro has been trying to milk the D&D IP, and in the last decade, several things have caused a renewed interest in the brand. From being featured in mega-hit shows like Stranger Things, to seeing an uptick over the COVID lockdowns, to internet shows like Critical Role, bringing D&D to a wider audience than ever before. But being so player-driven, it's not something I imagine is easy to monetize. They don't have a constant slew of releases like Magic. Players can share and print guides and campaigns online. Hasbro has done its damnedest to expand the IP into a bevy of toys, films, products, and other loot crate-filling fluff, selling the iconography of D&D first and foremost, as any company is wont to do with their intellectual property. But at its core, D&D wasn't made for the mass market. At least, it doesn't fit neatly into it as a marketing strategy. It's too decentralized, too dependent on the players. Which probably explains why Hasbro continues to put out promo images like this, advertising D&D as broadly as they can, hoping to get even more people to buy the products and IP they're supplying. As somebody who regularly plays D&D and Magic, but plays Magic far more than D&D, I understand being passionate about a game and how it's represented and marketed. And while I am a fair-weather D&D fan, I'd say I'm a pretty hardcore Magic fan. I have pet decks, commander decks, pauper decks. I have cracked and graded serialized cards. I read all the 90s books this year and loved some of them so much I made themed decks. I have 2 Ashnod decks and a Titania deck. I have multiple boxes of jank commander decks to build. I play almost weekly, and I always bring extra decks or playmats in case somebody standing by wants to join a pod. And let me tell you, as somebody who loves Magic, the creativity it affords, the fun that can be had at tables, everything negative that these culture war vultures are accusing Hasbro of, they are doing. They're just doing it to Magic the Gathering, not Dungeons & Dragons. If you're unfamiliar, Magic has had something called Universes Beyond for a few years now. What started as a limited drop secret lair of The Walking Dead with mechanically unique cards has drastically expanded. We went from limited commander sets with some geek-adjacent properties like 40k and Fallout to a total critical mass of oversaturation. And if you've hate-watched this far, get ready because I'm about to do the leftist YouTuber thing and chalk it up to, dare I say, capitalism. A slight oversimplification, but that's basically what it comes down to. Where the first properties to see Universes Beyond fit into Magic, mostly, or at least felt suited to your local game store, now we are just getting fucking anything. Yeah, I can see why they'd go with a 40k set. The crossover appeal is there. A lot of people who play Warhammer at an LGS will probably see the Magic and give it a try. And to be fair, other properties that have fantasy elements like Final Fantasy, Dungeons & Dragons, and Lord of the Rings have become well-regarded Magic sets in their own right, with enough fantasy imagery that fans can just pretend it's some Magic plane if they're unfamiliar with the original lore and worlds. Except now Hasbro has put the pedal to the metal on Universes Beyond. 2025 was the first year where half of all new cards and standard legal sets were Universes Beyond, and next year we'll see 7 sets, with 4 of them being Universes Beyond. Some of these you can kind of squint and see working in the planes of Magic, like The Hobbit, or if you want to get really extreme, maybe Star Trek, but then you've got a glut of just recognizable brand names shoehorned in, like the recent disastrous Spider-Man set and the upcoming Ninja Turtles. Don't take my word for it, go look at any Magic YouTuber and see what people are saying about the Spider-Man set. And I like Spider-Man. I made a whole essay on how much I like Spider-Man. Even people who are known, or try at least to be a little bit more positive, haven't been able to with Spider-Man. And it's not just that Hasbro's Marvel branding deal has put cards like Bagel with Schmear into existence at game tables, but because after the last few years, players are just tired. And I don't even have time to go into all the secret layer drop nonsense because that is a whole other monster, but also an issue that hints at just how money hungry Hasbro is to capitalize on Magic in any way possible. 6 sets a year is already a lot, and it's getting pumped up to 7 next year, but on top of a seemingly endless faucet of content that doesn't appear to be made for any demographic, but simply for the sake of more content. And it's because Magic, unlike D&D, has been a consistently profitable IP, which is why they're cranking that lever to max and trying to make it appeal to literally any fandom. And if you, like me, love the lore and worlds of Magic, you're out of luck. Innistrad, you got a remastered set. Ravnica, put in the bin after they tried to shoehorn in a detective aesthetic. Kamigawa, forget about it. And we aren't getting broad sets like Foundations or Modern Horizons, where we might be seeing new spins on classic characters like Yawgmoth or Ajani. We're not getting that focus on the lore and worlds of Magic. Instead, we are getting 1,000 more bagels with the schmears. This is what it really looks like when a company abandons an IP to lose its identity for mass appeal. It's not by appealing to broader demographics of players who are already predisposed to being interested in the game, certainly. Magic, like D&D, has always appealed to queer people, people of color. In lore, the game had a trans character with Zancha in the 90s. One of the main series protagonists is a black man, Teferi. The series has all but been defined by its strong women like Chandra, who's a lesbian, Liliana, Nisa, Jaya Ballard, Glissa, Vraska. A lot of them end in A for some reason. But the point I'm trying to make is broad appeal to people, to players, isn't what ruins a game or makes an IP lose its identity. Getting more people into a hobby, more people active and supporting your local game stores, more people writing their own campaigns and coming up with their own settings is what keeps a game alive. No, the dilution happens when companies try to hammer the square peg of an IP into another's round hole. They've been hammering Magic into Spider-Man's hole. Wait, it dilutes what people identified and gravitated to originally, so they can sell more to yet another market share of fans, regardless of those fans' demographics. Hasbro has been incentivized to keep doing this by consumers, by fans who will ravenously garble up any crossover media, no matter how ill-fitting. I made a whole video essay with like green screen film segments where I talk about the modern black hole of IP, where everything is becoming everything else. So go check that out after this video. It's not anyone's fault except the mass consumers who will keep buying it up, and the IP holders who simply only care about the bottom line. And from there, it's an Ouroboros eating its own tail. If you're a fan of these games and worlds, you're just along for the ride. There are legitimate things to have grievances about in these games and how they're treated by their IP holders, but trying to sell it to wider demographics of people isn't one of them. No, that is instead a simple-minded, overly narrow framing of a narrative sold to fans by influencers and other angry fans who are either invested in getting people mad and keeping them that way, or by people who have bought into these ideas that feel a need to gatekeep or protect their hobby from hordes of invading LGBTQ and whatnot. The point of games like D&D is friendship, camaraderie, imagination, and adventure. If that looks like a pastel block party, that's fine. If it looks like a grimdark hellscape, hey, as long as everyone is having fun, I don't really care. Do what works for you. That's the whole point. Nobody is making you play with people you don't want to, or play away or into an aesthetic you don't like. At the end of the day, though, if you have no problem imagining a world where you can be a badass warrior, or where every woman has the proportions of Hitomi Tanaka in a chainmail bikini, but you have a problem grappling with queer people or black people interacting with that hobby in a different way than you, it kind of seems like you're not in it for adventuring or creativity, but because you'd rather close everything else out and live in a simple, basic fantasy. And that just sounds like a really lonely, sad adventure to me. Hello, everybody, and thank you for watching this latest little essay thing I've been working on this week. If you are new to the channel, or you would just like to support this video because you enjoyed it, you can join all these cool people scrolling across your screen at some of the links down below by either joining the Patreon or giving a couple bucks to Ko-Fi to help me upgrade my setup, upgrade my equipment, pay my bills, and just generally make sure I can keep pursuing this. Because like usual, it is not just these smaller videos I work on, but as I am right now, much larger, more in-depth, and heavier documentary content. If you would like to help my content journey in any way, please feel free to give at the links down below. Otherwise, just liking, commenting, doing the whole YouTube thing will suffice. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed this one, and I hope you have a wonderful day.